Okay, we thought we'd do something a little bit different for this and have a bit of a fireside chat, I guess.
Great venue for a fireside.
It is a very good venue for it. I thought we should have a fire in the background, but we couldn't quite organise that. So we're just going to have a little chat here, and then we'll go into the main session, which has a kind of digital threat and security focus, and then we'll break into the roundtables. Victor will be participating in that, so you'll all get a chance to talk to him and ask questions. So that's how it goes. So Victor, I have to say, when news of you retiring from politics or the upcoming election came out, I think the collective IT industry shed a tear. I think everybody, and I was kind of watching on kind of LinkedIn and the amount of kudos you got for the time that you've put into the tech sector was amazing. You must have looked at that and gone, I've done a pretty good job.
Well, thanks, Phil. I shed a tear as well because it's such... it's so hard disconnecting, or the thought of disconnecting from family, and the tech industry has been like family to me. You know, they've supported me along the way, they've helped me, they've encouraged me, and it's not just me, it's the whole team. Again, I'm the front face of it, but there's a whole team of people in the Department of Customer Service, my ministerial office. But we're all on this mission together, the tech sector, and it's... it was sad, but it was a clear decision. It was a tough decision, but it was a clear decision because I have to put my family first when it comes to health. So, but yeah, I was very humbled to read the comments. But hopefully that's showered across the board because it's a reflection of all of us that are on the journey.
And I actually I didn't meet you, but I listened to you, and it was actually my son had a visit to Parliament House. And you actually came out and spoke to them. And you were talking to 12-year-olds and you started talking about big data. and I said to my son after,
read the room, Victor.
I said, wow, I've never seen that from a politician. But quite obviously tech has been something you've had a passion for a long time. Where did that come from? Where did it start?
Well, I just think tech is the only way that we will quickly reduce suffering and improve quality of life. We're not going to do it by holding hands and singing Kumbaya. As much as we'd like to, we need to use tech as an enabler to improve our human journey. And I've seen that firsthand. I remember when I was just 26. It was on my 26th birthday. A second cousin of mine, he had a football injury. He became a quadriplegic, and he's still in a wheelchair right now, a complete quad. And it's just heartbreaking. But then about 4 years ago, I went to the UTS, and they were essentially, the very front end of the BCI, brain-computer interface, and where we're moving in that to see how we can use brainwaves to start moving limbs. And we can use tech to help the lame to walk, the blind to see, the deaf to hear. That's the journey, that's the mission, and that's why I'm really passionate about it. Okay.
And you've got 200 something days left.
215.
215 is counting. So what are your top kind of three priorities that you'd like to achieve in that time? And what legacy are you hoping to leave behind?
Well, it's again not my legacy because talking about my legacy is like just reminds me of the what is it? Is it Lord of the Rings? My precious, and that is I'm a speck of dust in terms of space and time. When I leave this planet, I'm not going to look over my shoulder. Oh, look, that was my legacy. It's our mission. So what do I think our mission is? We've definitely increased the digital maturity of the people of our state over the last 3 or 4 years, but there's more to do. So I think we focus predominantly, and I'll call it the middle section in the terms of the working age. But then there's the seniors. We brought them on the journey a bit through the QR codes and Dinosaur vouchers. We've seen that. I want to help continue that journey through the digitisation of the seniors card. And I'm going to do a social media post about this tomorrow to say, the fact, I'll give you an example. My mum, she's not confident at all when it comes to tech. But because and we encouraged her to upgrade her smartphone, she refused to do it because the phone was so old she couldn't even put the community check-ins and stuff like that. She saw her friends one by one use it, and then she said, "Okay, I'll use it." But now she's getting more comfortable with FaceTime. That introduces a world of telehealth, which is going to be critical to her life. As she's now 74, 75, she'll need more and more of those services. So that's why keeping the seniors on that digital journey will help profoundly in health outcomes. On the first side spectrum, birth certificates, the digital health book, the education wallet. So I want to broaden that ecosystem. And then in terms of the top 3 priorities, it's without a doubt the digital ID. A subset of that is the digital birth certificate, which is a stopgap until we get to the fully fledged digital ID. And then those 2 arms, which is the 2 great levers of humanity, is education and health. So the education wallet, so that will help us go through labour market mobility, and that's a massive play. Mobility and efficiency, particularly as we're seeing huge demands in terms of the labour market right now. It's only going to get more tight. So we need to make sure that people are optimised to be their best selves and their best, go to their best place when it comes to labour. And then the second is the health app and everything we're doing around that true life experience, because I think that's where we'll get significant uplift.
So in this morning's keynote, Anthony Murfett talked a lot about social inclusion, and how much did you have to take that into consideration and consider the possibility by bringing a lot of these online that might actually leave some people behind, and what was your approach to that?
Yeah, look, that was, I think, one of my big failings. I've got lots of failings, but I think that was one of my biggest failings in the first 2 or 3 years that I really became quite zealotry about digital because of the power of it. Is that I was so focused on the optimism of what it can do, and let's digitalize this. I had a blind spot about the people like my mum, and it actually took the pandemic for me to realise, wow, we must never forget there are people in our community that, for whatever reason, whether it's trust, confidence, capacity, whatever, will not embrace digital, and we have, in many ways, an even higher obligation to look after them. And we can use digital to help them out. Like, for example, we reversed engineered the check-in with a QR code. So we basically, instead of using QR, scanning in, we asked the shops to scan the QR code. So we can use digital to help those that are disenfranchised. So that's been my number one lesson, to make sure that they are absolutely part of the equation, because that goes to trust. If a government is providing services to me, great. But if that government is not looking after my mum, I'm going to mark you down. So yeah, that's a big part of the journey.
Okay, and seems like you've given me a window into failings. Is there anything else that you kind of regret, or you think if you had your time over, you'd have done a little bit differently?
Yeah, when I was Minister for Aboriginal Affairs, this is such a beautiful awakening for me. Again, I didn't have the maturity back then that I've started to acquire now. I'm all grey hairs now. But when I was Minister for Aboriginal Affairs, I'd never forget going to some of these areas, and the data architecture was just not even poor, it just didn't exist. And I remember undertaking a task force, because I was a brand new minister then, I had no idea. And the first thing I did is, let's get a task force, because there was all these reports before, 2 ways together, which the community really called, 2 ways apart, because there was just a massive disconnect between government services and delivery for the people on the ground. Anyway, so we set up a coalition of Aboriginal people organisations. We started a listening tour type thing. We built a whole lot of things after that. But one of the things that I definitely learnt was, back then we were focused on service delivery. The Aboriginal community understandably said, look, we want better health services, we want better this, better that. But it was such a beautiful awakening that now, when I'm speaking to the Minister for Aboriginal Affairs and that same peak organisation that we set was, You know what they're after now? Data. Because information's power, and it's about empowering community. And I just thought, wow, in a decade we've moved so much. So one of my regrets is I did not have the maturity I've got now back then, because I would have really driven that empowering data piece much harder back then.
So another kind of thing that popped up in the keynote, and has been a bit of a recurring thing, is ethics and things around AI and things like that. And we've had some federal cases where kind of robo-debt and things that have probably not been done. How does government set itself up to approach all these technologies with that social sensitivity, so that you are being ethical and you are considering the social side of it?
Yeah, it's a great question, because I remember watching Coded Bias, which probably a lot of us have seen in the room, and I was so horrified. I think I watched it about 2 years ago. I was so horrified about the consequences. Like, everybody knows what the great things that AI can do, but everybody also knows, particularly in this leadership group, that if we don't get the settings right, you'll get some serious bias put into the algorithm now, but who knows where that's going to play out in years to come, particularly when you're talking about digital identity and all these things. Like, it really could be a terrible dystopian outcome. And it's not worth thinking about. It's just not worth thinking about. So I watched Coded Bias on the Saturday, and I was so shook up. I remember watching it again on the Sunday, just in case I missed anything. So I called a great man, Dr. Ian Opperman, and I was telling him about how shook up I was. Anyway, we started putting the design in place for the AI assurance framework. So we created the corpus through the Digital Restart Fund. We put a straight AI assurance framework. So now, in the past, you just ask for money, and it might be in the back of your mind about AI, but now you've actually got to start constructively thinking about it before you get the money. And then we've also got an AI advisory committee that Ian chairs to make sure that there's ethics around it. Now, maybe the next iteration, because we need oversight, is another layer of independent oversight. I think beyond my 215 days, it'd be good to see an AI AI commissioner. So we've got a privacy commissioner, we've got an information commissioner. Maybe do we have a data/AI commissioner? I've reached out, and I can't give too much away yet, but I've reached out to a friend across the aisle about what else we can do in this responsible AI space to again build trust. Because if I go and say AI, I'm part of the executive, but I want to make sure that there is oversight, there's checks and balances all the way, because there will be failures, but the huge breakdown in trust is if there's no support mechanism, so safety net underneath, because we were just so gung-ho and we didn't put the insurance in place.
And I guess in tech, there's always the pressure to do things quickly and things like that, and then counterbalancing that with the just slowing down and saying, are we doing that right?
Spot on. And in public life, like, we're dealing with lives. Like, we're not building sandcastles here. Particularly when you throw in the biotech space. And you mix AI, you mix biotech, quantum, and CRISPR, and all these things that are happening there. Tell you what, these discussions, I can't imagine what these discussions are going to be like in 20 years' time, in 30 years' time. It's really profound. We do need more emphasis, because we're entering into a world that not many people get to really see, let alone understand. People in this room would, but the average punter in the street wouldn't.
You spoke about digital identity, and obviously New South Wales is ahead of the game in that. What have you learned that Australia as a whole, and that the federal government and indeed other states, what's the big takeouts that you think everyone else needs to listen to?
Well, I think trust. The last major keynote I gave was around the trinity of trust, the who, the what, the why. And that's because we can build any product, digital ID, birth certificates, whatever it is. But if it's not built on the foundation of trust, it's just not going to be adopted, and you're going to wreck it for everyone. So we need to get the trust in place. Once you get that, and that includes talking about and then implementing oversight mechanisms, etc., because things have to be trustworthy as well. So I guess the big takeout with the feds, because they've already got MyGov, and they've got a biometric platform there for ID. Australia Post have got the same. You've got a startup doing the same. We'll be the fourth in the ecosystem. But the difference with us and the feds is that we've got a really trusted platform, a delivery platform here through service. We've got 5.52 million people that have used the Dine Sky vouchers. We've got 75% downloaded the driver's license. There is a huge digital maturity in the state. So I'm expecting that there will be an uplift in relation to digital ID. Digital ID on itself is just, it's like having a book on the shelf, but you need to be able to use it and read it. So because we'll get the uplift, then you can use that to use your working with children checks to keep people safe. Then you can use it to hire cars to keep your personal information safe, etc., etc. So, getting that broader uplift in the ecosystem, I think, is where it will play out. It's inevitable. It will happen. It's just, can you do it at pace with trust to bring the community with you?
And I guess you've got multiple governments with multiple interests and multiple ideologies. If you're moving towards it, essentially, how do you possibly deal with that? And
that's why I'm really focused on Web3 and not so much the. Sure, you get the crypto, the blockchains, the NFTs, and stuff like that, but what really excites me about Web3 is where it plays out from a principle perspective, that is about more individual control of your data, and because that builds trust. So, I'm the Minister for Customer Service, right? So customer service is really about the quality of the service delivery. But my very last speech as a minister will be entitled "The Power of One," because it's about the individual. Sure, the customer service is qualitative, but it's about the power or empowering the individual, because the power of the individual in a democracy is counterbalanced or is a contrast to the power of the state in an autocracy. So the more we empower the individual through control of their information, their data, their credentials, the more we strengthen our democracy. And we're talking about basic freedoms that we enjoy now. And I think the world is going through some extraordinary challenges this decade and beyond. And if we want these freedoms and this way of life, we need to make sure we empower the individual.
I think the last federal election showed there was a definite taste for accountability in government and independent commissions and so what. Have you looked at the place that Web3 and things like that have to provide some accountability for government?
Look, the closest we got there, Phil, is I spoke to, as most people in the room would be aware, Tim Berners-Lee. So Tim Berners-Lee, was one of the founding architects of the web, and he's now building out in Flanders product around service delivery in a Web3 format. And I reached out to Flanders about a month ago, and we're having some really good discussions because we're trying to do the same in relation to Service New South Wales app and the like. And apparently, because they've obviously been in the field longer than us, but they've done a desktop review, and apparently suddenly Flanders and us are really, really designing it out this way. I think then, so I don't know where the feds are, but I'd be encouraged to see if we could do something in that space. Because ultimately, if you put the power in the individual and there is data mobility around the individual, then that will be the major driver for improved service delivery. Because as an individual, if I don't like the service you're offering, I will move to there. And that's what we've seen in New South Wales, that if you can do that, that will be the greatest engine for change.
Okay, just last couple of bit. So what's next for government service delivery? You've obviously talked about personalisation. Is that
100%.
Is that the dominant theme that you said?
It's personalisation. Again, it's trust. Have to build trust. Trust, and all the things we were talking about, and even more. and that goes, there's a whole discussion around that. But in terms of other big products that that really excite me, it's around e-reg. So government, for example, I'll give many people realise that we tried that local government amalgamation with mixed success. I don't think it was particularly great, but anyway, mixed success. But what we quickly realised, is that you didn't need to amalgamate the front end. You could have amalgamated the back end in terms of the e-planning portal, and that's what we did. Essentially, e-planning, in many ways, is a digital amalgamation. So councils could keep their shop front and do their service delivery through at the front, but it's that seamless portal in the back. And sure, it's not perfect, but it continues to evolve and improve. That's what we need to do. And that then gave us an idea in relation to e-regulation. I'm really excited about this. This is big, deep thinking. And again, leading the world. Nobody else is doing this to my knowledge. You got safe work, you got fair trading, you got local councils, you got food authority, you got liquor and gaming, you got all these regulators out there, again, on their own vertical, all doing their own interface with business. It's just a mess. What we should do, and what we are now doing, we've created the Manda platform for fair trading, and now bit by bit we're asking each new regulator as they come on board to come on board that Amanda platform. So that then becomes the interface with business community. Rather than all these regulators doing their own thing, they can become the specialists in terms of policy design and the like, but that is the interface with the business community and therefore the customer at the end. That's big. The other big thing that we're doing is, and I'll give you an example, another thing, the digital birth certificate. Birthdays and marriages, again, regulator of sorts, that's built on the Amanda platform. Because there's interfaces everywhere you go on this. So that's really exciting. I hope to God that we continue that well beyond the 215 days. And then another big thing I'm really excited about is the Building Trust Index. And then we've got a carbon index around buildings to work out what the true carbon is. And the whole work we're doing in the e-construction space with David Chandler, like world leading. That's, so that came from an idea, we had about 5-6 years ago around e-property. You and I change, but the parcel of land never does. That's in situ. What happens in terms of use and ownership of the parcel of land changes. So we use that like the rings of a tree. As it evolves around the e-property, we build that reservoir of data. So that's really exciting, and no one's doing that as well. So there's heaps of other stuff, but these are just the immediate things that come to mind.
And finally, obviously, you've got your hands full at the moment with things, but a few years down the track, where are you looking to come back? Do you think you'll return to the tech sector, or not return? Do you see the tech sector will be a future home for you, perhaps?
Well, look, I'll have time for nostalgia in 216 days, but every second I think about days beyond the 216, I'm wasting an opportunity now, and it's really hard to get into public life, and it's really hard to get into a leadership position, and it's really hard to impact change inside the machine. I just want to make sure I use every day as effectively as I can. Because again, I'll have plenty of time for nostalgia afterwards. Who knows? Look, I'd like to be part of a mission of continuing in the tech mission, but see what the universe has in store. I have no idea.
Okay. Can everyone thank Victor Dominello? Right, so as I said, Victor will take part in the roundtable. If I could invite my panel speakers, Victor, you just move down there. So in this session, which has a bit of a theme around digital threats and cyber security, Peter Sandilands is our analyst who's going to kick us off. He's from IBRS. We have Malcolm Bailie from Nozomi Networks, Anthony Woodward from Logicalis, and Francois Henrion from Paytron. So I'll turn over to Peter to start us off.
Ignore the suave exterior. I am actually old. Now you lot came along here to learn or ask questions, but I'm actually going to start with a question. So, can anybody tell me how many vendors are in the cybersecurity space at this point in time, or around this time? Quick numbers, quick.
100.
10,000.
Anybody else?
1,200.
A bit more, about 2,800 or thereabouts. Richard Steinman has done a security yearbook and he continues to count and categorise the vendors. Now, if you think that every one of those vendors has around 5 products, and that's probably an underestimate. I mean, CrowdStrike claimed to have 12 modules. If you look at other players, they have many as well. So there's probably around 10 to 12,000 cybersecurity products in the marketplace today. So how the hell do those companies differentiate themselves or make any impact in the industry? So they have to try and find a niche. And the trouble is, as the pond grows bigger, the niches grow smaller. So these vendors are all out there carefully fighting for a definition of where they're going to fit in the market and say, you need us because we answer this particular problem in the market space. Many of the fresh startups approach this on the basis that if we build a good enough niche, somebody will buy us. Or if we build a good enough niche, the VCs will give us lots of money to do what we want and we'll become a de facto standard. So now let's take that view across to the people who are using the technology. So how many cybersecurity products would a largish scale Australian operation have in place today? Anybody?
100?
Yeah, 40, 100?
70.
70? Yeah, it's around that sort of number. It would grow from somewhere around 20, which is hard to believe but true, upwards to over 100. All right, so I've got 100 security products deployed in my organisation. How do I run them? Where do I get the staff to do that? And how do I integrate the information that is in these 100 different screens that are around the place? Right, there's a significant issue that's ongoing. In the last couple of weeks there's been, and I've got to get the acronym right, the Open Cybersecurity Schema Framework announced, which is a whole bunch of vendors saying, and some users, saying if we use this mechanism, we can share information and reduce the number of screens that we have to deal with in our environment. And so from an end user perspective, the challenge in cybersecurity is not so much the technology and the cybersecurity issues, it's the actual management and running of this environment and how they get it to be effective for them. And we'll see lots of, and as you talk to end user organisations, ask them how many products they bought which are no longer in use or are not actively monitored or are just sitting on the shelf and were never deployed. Anybody who was around in the early days of IDS will know that many IDSs were bought as a checkbox exercise and then chucked on the shelf because they were too damn hard to manage. So we have this challenge in the industry in that we've got an industry that's built on selling products to a target audience that is struggling to know what to do with the products. And as a vendor entering the market, one of the first things the vendor has to do is to actively educate people what the problem is their product solves. So that's a real challenge. This is a bête noire of mine. How many people here speak a second language? There's a few hands. Now, as you look around, are the rest of the audience dumb because they don't speak a second language? Are they stupid? Do they need education? We do that daily with our users. The IT people, and in particular, the cybersecurity people, go, look at the dumb users. They click on the links and they open this and they do that. Please stop. The users are not IT people. They're people in there trying to do a job. And I would entreat you to tackle this when you're dealing with vendors and you're dealing with organizations. If a vendor comes to you and says, the users are stupid, we're going to educate them, stop them. The users aren't stupid, it's just not their job. See? Yeah.
Thanks, Pete. G'day everyone, my name's Bailie. So I work for Nozomi Networks, an industrial cyber company. I've been in operational technology for over 25 years. So today I just want to steer the conversation to a bit of a different topic. Instead of talking about IT, it's more about OT, so operational technology. To me, this is the core of the actual economy. So where do we find operational technology? We find in oil and gas, our power grids, health, building management systems, our water treatment plants, transportation, manufacturing. So there's a bigger topic out there than just talking about IT security. So the evolution of OT and why do we need to secure it? Because the way it used to be over 40 years, 30 years, the past 20 years, is that it was very much proprietary systems. They were very much air-gapped, and therefore, security wasn't a requirement back then. But now that we've moved to the future, in Industry of 4, that we're more connected, more digitized, and more regulated. So there's more telemetry that we need to get out of these OT systems and pass to IT so we can make predictive maintenance decisions. And with all that, we're going to be more regulated, like we started with the Australian Energy Sector Cybersecurity Framework. So we started with the utilities to get a baseline. So through that, we've now got the SOCI Act as well. So the security of critical infrastructure, where we've classified a lot of these organisations, I just had on the previous slide, to why we've got to be secure. And then we bring it back to Pete's point around people, process and technology. So the type of people that we'll communicate with are in the actual OT environments, these are more trades-based people instead of degree qualified. So it's a lot different. So therefore the training that we need to provide to these people is going to be different as well. Around the process side of things, the support model. So in IT, we're going to have a lot more people in there to support these systems. We're going to have database admin people, sysadmin people, network engineers, but in operational technology, this sort of lands on one person. It's a very small workforce, and it's very niche in what they do too. And therefore, the technology is different. So these OT teams need to secure not only legacy systems, but also our newer systems, our commercial off-the-shelf systems. So it's a very different and wide varying skill set. And just to put it into perspective, the actual equipment that is running the OT systems, these programmable logic controllers, these systems are actually mini computers in themselves. And when you look at it, why we wanted to secure these PLCs, in effect, is because you'll notice, I suppose we had one with the baggage handling systems at airports. If they go down, it'd be noticed. But if the email server went down at the airport system, would you notice? No. So the way that OT environments interact into our everyday environments is very critical. And therefore the fundamental priorities around IT and OT is different too, because safety is paramount. You can't take down an actual train, you can't just stop a train in its tracks there and then. There's regulations around how you do that in a safe environment because people can be killed. And so therefore the way we do that CIA triad is totally different. And then when we're actually looking at the security for industrial control systems, there's a few different comparisons that we can make. So the objectives are different. So in the OT systems, we want to stop bad things from happening because we want to ensure that we've got 100% availability of those systems. The environments are different. So again, coming back, these systems are proprietary and specialised, so the different type of people that we have are totally different to IT. And therefore the comparison of threats is totally different as well. So in OT systems, there's less known about this, it's not communicated, it's not in the news as much, there's only a few things that we can talk about. But in the IT systems, it's more categorised and well known, and therefore we can quantify these results. But the controls, they differ as well. So we're very constrained in what we can do. As I was saying, we can't just stop a train in its tracks. But in the IT systems, they're much more mature. Just in closing, I suppose there's more content that we have in our actual Nozomi Networks website as well. So here we've got our own security research labs, and these people are actually going out there looking at those exploits and vulnerabilities. And we've produced our first 2022 half one IoT OT report. So please go further there, or further blogs and more white papers as well. Thank you.
Hi everybody, hope you like our new livery, although normally I hope it doesn't make me look that unwell. So Logicalis Australia, we're part of the Logicalis group of global companies, about 7,000 odd people globally. In Australia we're about 300 people, and we have coverage in Australia and up into Malaysia, about 400 Australian clients as well. We also have a global COE which helps us to develop some of our in-market offerings, not only in Australia but around the world. In fact, a lot of those good learnings that we've had in Australia have made their way into the global business. What's going on in the market? So something interesting we think we've been finding when we've been talking to the market is over 70% of executives actually feel like cybersecurity concerns is holding back innovation at their organisation. And nearly that number also recognise that security is a business enabler rather than a business blocker. But what's interesting about that is nearly 60% of organisations aren't actually embedding security at the start of business initiatives. It tends to come in at the end. So what are we doing about that? Well, we're connecting with customer needs that we're seeing in the market. So the software revolution is really how so many organisations are engaging with their customers and their constituents and their staff differently. But the thing is that what they actually want is cloud native frameworks and capabilities. They want integration between old and new, and they want capabilities around DevOps and agility to work. But most importantly, they want assurance that as they go through that innovation cycle, they're not exposing the organisation to security risks. So what we do is look to secure the whole journey. So it's an engagement that starts at aligning the technology outcome with the business outcome, really looking at what is the business problem that you're trying to solve. But let's think about security from the get-go with that, and you'll see some success in market around that. Then we implement that technology roadmap in such a way that we bring in the right security platforms to do that job. And finally, we operationalise what's been built into an ongoing service that has a securely delivered platform that can really help that organisation stand up what they're trying to do in a business sense. What we really are trying to do here is to de-risk the innovation cycle by ensuring compliance from the get-go, but it's a modern real-time security approach. Now, in doing all of that, what we found is that the traditional view of cybersecurity is not really fit for purpose, because a major enabling technology being cloud for innovation, one of the big problems with that is people are not too sure about its security. So that's holding them back. On top of that, innovation is iterative. You have to keep going and trying again and improving and having flexibility to iterate. But as you do that, are you exposing your organisation's data or systems to security threats? And worse of all of that is just at the time where you're all celebrating and high-fiving that you've got this great innovation and you want to go public to customers with it, comes the issue that it's now stuck. It can't go into production because the cybersecurity process, reporting and sign-off is going to kill you. Now we just cross our fingers for the tech gods here. So what we call these are the four horsemen. So let's see if this is going to work for us. Hopefully there's audio.
Famine, pestilence, death, and the other one.
Is that a seagull? Family, is that seagull a seagull?
No, pestilence, it's a dog.
Like a flying dog?
Falling catapult.
A flying catapult? Not famish. So what's new?
Microchip technology.
What?
Microchip technology. Quite a new thing, isn't it?
So Paul is waiting for the apocalypse.
So, I guess the summary of that is boring. Thank you. That's it.
Good afternoon. My name is Francois Henrion from Paytron, and I'm from Johannesburg. Why am I telling you that? Because 2.5 years ago, my family and I immigrated here, and the first thing people asked me is, where are you from? And I said, South Africa. I said, yes, we know you're from South Africa. Where in South Africa are you from? So I thought I'd just clarify that. So I'll take you through a bit of a story. I don't admit to it to a lot of people, so please don't let this come out in the news. But about 20 years ago, I was an auditor for about 3 years with Deloitte. And we were auditing quite a well-known car manufacturer. And one of the things I most remember about this particular place was the people. Friendliest people, really, really nice. Especially this old lady. She always came in every day and made us some warm cups of tea, and gave us some cookies, and just gave you that warm, fuzzy feeling while you were going about doing your auditing. And one day, one of the guys picked up an anomaly. Something didn't look right in the accounts payable department. He kept digging, and a few weeks later, they uncovered a huge fraud. Millions of dollars were stolen from this company. Guess who was the culprit? The old lady. So what did things look like? That was not meant to look like that with the accounting system. Use your imagination. So what did things look like 20 years ago? You had the banks, a couple of policemen, so there was 1 or 2 of these guys around protecting the bank. You had the accounting systems, variation of probably some DOS related, Excel related, payroll processing systems, but a lot of manual processes in between, right? Between all of those processing systems in the banks. What has changed? More of these guys, really, really securing the banks, right? Making them super impenetrable. You just can't get into them. Highly secure. So the topic of my discussion, by the way, is payment security, right? That's why I keep going on about security. So payments as a whole is pretty secure. The accounting guys and the payroll suppliers, they also caught up a bit, right? They stuck up a bit of a 2-factor authentication in front of the system, built in some approval workflows, still a couple of manual processes in between. So what has stayed the same? Alice. Alice is still around. So despite putting in all these significant controls into our systems, we haven't created a closed ecosystem amongst all of these secure systems. We still have human intervention, human processes in between these systems, and that's where security risk and payment risk exists the most. And I'll give you an example. So at the moment, when you go to pretty much any accounting system out there, you'll go and the accountant will go in, look at the payment run, what are the suppliers that need to get paid, and this is after they've gone through heaps of internal controls, approving the beneficiaries, making sure that they've contacted the beneficiary, yes, it's valid bank account detail, the supplier amount is correct, the quantity is correct, it's all being controlled by the accounting system. What do? There's a little button that says download an ABA file. What is an ABA file? It's a text file, right? Anybody can go in, open it with Notepad, you can go and edit it, you can change it, you can change any number in there, you can change the amount that you want to pay. You take that file, you send it to somebody over email or unsecure network, save it in an unsecure location, only for somebody to pick up that file and load it up into their bank account, where again the data can be manipulated. So that is something that happens to this day. And in fact, it's been happening for quite a while. I was doing a bit of research. 2015, somebody published a report around the insecurity of ABA files. So that's 7 years ago. And most of the controls they recommended was around the ABA file. And to this day, nothing of that's been done. Right? So that's a big issue. And that's one of these controls. And we can go through heaps of those types of examples of the problems that arise out there. So what is the solution? So we created Paytron, which is a payments platform. It's a B2B payments platform. in which we create a closed ecosystem in which all of the users touching the payment from the original invoice, the PDF, or originating in the accounting system is within a closed, secure ecosystem. So from that platform, you can go and make a domestic payment, you can make an international payment, you can pay your suppliers, and you've got a credit card with expense management, all from the same secure ecosystem. Now, what are the things that we do to do that? Obviously, we connect into all of the banks. We've got partnerships such as JP Morgan, international partnerships, Visa, Barclays, some domestic partnerships as well. So we will connect into the bank, take the money, and then actually own that as a payment provider. So we're a regulated entity. We're not just a software provider. And the reason I mention that is one of the things that you may be asking coming our way that's important from a digital adoption perspective in Australia is open banking and e-invoicing, right? So e-invoicing, game changer, we look forward to that. Open banking, it's around the corner apparently. It's been delayed a little bit. It's going to happen next year. But if we look forward to what's been happening in the UK, open banking infrastructure is still very limited in its capability. If you're only a software providing layer on top of open banking, your user experience will be limited to the actual underlying bank's capability. So if open banking allows you to make a domestic payment, you as a payment provider can only make a domestic payment. What makes Patyron different is we own the entire customer experience. We'll be able to pull funds from the bank, again, pay international, domestic, or international suppliers, controlling the entire user experience end to end. Thank you.